Hi, and thank you for joining Chasing Energy. I'm your host, Andrew Lucas. I'm so glad you're here today. Cover the basics first, my ask of you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. I'd love it if you downloaded the episodes. And also, chasing.energy is our website. If you go there, you will see the newsletter. I am starting a newsletter where you will get some very abbreviated points on things I'm researching and feel are relevant to share. Always around the topics of mindset, training, and nutrition, as are our guest. Today's guest is Chelsie Ward. She focuses on the nutrition aspect. She is a BSN and RN. She has a book called Healed His Way, Learning to Trust the Great Physician. She has a website, chelsieward.com. We cover a host of topics today, not the least of which is gut health. We talk a lot about how do you reset your gut health? How do you do a detox? We talk a little bit about the liver as well, a pathogen purge, how to train the bugs that live in your stomach to get to where you can steer your cravings so that you're craving different foods, which is something that really it's one of those things that I've learned. What you eat more of, you begin to crave. Especially when you associate the way you feel after you eat certain foods. We cover her supplements. Hint, one of them that kind of surprised me and I'm going to be adding to my supplement stack is reishi mushroom. I've ordered some of this, and when I have more feedback, I'll be happy to share that. This was our second try at an interview. We had started one previously, and her laptop had some issues, and we had to, bump it out 2 weeks. And the fault is entirely mine that there's not been an episode in the last 2 weeks. I know it breaks your heart, right? But then fault is entirely mine because once that interview got rescheduled, I was like, well, I'm taking 2 weeks off. So I took advantage of it. There it is, and I'm happy to bring it to you today. I hope you enjoy it. Check out her website, and please subscribe to the newsletter. With no further ado, here's Chelsie Ward. Chelsie Ward, thanks for being here today. Thanks for joining me at Chasing Energy. How are you?
I'm doing great, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and we've had practice, and we've moved things around. Life happens, and I'm so glad that we were able to connect today, and thank you for making time to be here. And I mean that genuinely and sincerely because I know you're very busy. You got a lot going on today. Happy, healthy, and whole. Tell me what those 3 words mean to you.
So I remember when I was on my healing journey, my mom looked at me one day and she was like, Chelsie, I just don't understand how you are always so positive. Like, how are you going through so much and like the world just doesn't know? Nobody has any idea. And I was only telling her bits and pieces of my story. And she was just like, I just don't understand it. And I think that it was probably the very first thing that happened to me on my healing journey was I realized that if I wanted to change and shift things, my attitude had to be the first thing. Mm-hmm. And I remember listening to CDs and discs and players, and I would just drill in my head how important it was to focus on the positives in life, to celebrate the good things, and to enjoy the journey. And one day I was doing a live video, oddly enough, and the 3 words just came to me: happy, healthy, and whole. And I didn't realize it, but I was picking up those words throughout my own journey. And one woman even looked at me one day and she said, your mission on this planet is wholeness. And at first I didn't understand what that even meant. But to me, I started to realize that we're looking at medicine from a medical viewpoint based on medications and surgeries and all of those different things. And what I learned on my journey, not just the mindset piece and the emotional piece and the positive attitude piece, and then pulling in all of the nutrition and all of the healthy things that we do from a lifestyle standpoint on a day-to-day basis, but I also realized that we were missing a spiritual component to health, that people a lot of times don't feel centered or grounded in anything that means anything to them from a spiritual level. And what I learned is that if we want to heal, then we have to look at all three of those components, your mind, your emotions, your body, your spirit, like all those things, and really just create an enjoyable plan that works for us as individuals.
Okay.
And to me,
So,
that's wholeness.
okay. So whole, and hopefully I'm not misinterpreting you here, but whole is more the synergistic effect of all the other things coming into fruition, the spiritual, the body, the mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I love it. And I think data backs up the importance of community and having a higher power in your life in terms of longevity. And probably more important than longevity is the quality of life, right? Are you enjoying your life? I think we've all had that relative that we think they're just full of piss and vinegar and won't die. But
Yeah.
what kind of life is that? Okay, so let's start by we're going to talk about gut nutrition and a couple other things, but I want to start with your analysis. Again, most of my listeners know the basics, but I'd really like to know from you, what do you think are the caveats that people overlook when it comes to gut health? In other words, they've read the clickbait, they know the basics. Maybe they've gone out and bought probiotics or whatever. But what do you consider to be the caveats that are causing disruption to the gut health? Let's start there.
Where I think we miss it so many times is we're plugging a hole. And we have a symptom and we say, oh, I have a symptom. Okay, well, my friend's taking probiotics. Let me just take the probiotic. Well, the probiotic may work for you and it may not work for you. Maybe they have, you know, less of a certain bacteria in their gut than you. Maybe that works for them. And then you're like, wait a minute, that works for Sally. Why is it not working for me? So I think that's what we're doing. And it may be L-glutamine. It may be these wonderful supplements that seem to work great for everyone else. And then we take them and we're kind of like, well, I still have these symptoms.
Yeah.
So what I've realized is there is a systematic process that works really well when we're working to heal the gut. And if we're not following that, then we're not following along with nature and the way the body operates and the way the body functions. So if we already have an overgrowth of bacteria in our gut and we add in additional probiotics and we get bloating and fatigue and all these things, we're like, wait a minute, probiotics healed her, but now probiotics gave me bloating. Well, of course, probiotics gave you bloating because maybe you have a condition called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, meaning there's already an overgrowth of bacteria in your gut and you're feeding a monster, right? So I think where we miss it is that there are certain conditions that need probiotics or certain supplements. There are certain conditions that don't. And we're also not looking at the systems in the right way. So, for example, if you're going to detox the body, then you want to make sure that those drainage systems are open. You want to make sure that the liver is healthy, the kidneys are healthy. You want to make sure that all of those lines of communication, basically, is how I like to think about it, make sure that they're open and able to work together, able to process those toxins out of the body. Because if not, then when you start working on these systems and you don't even have a way to drain out all the toxins or the bugs or anything else, any types of infection, then you're going to create a backup. And that actually makes your symptoms worse. It makes you feel worse. And I think another big missing piece of the puzzle is, especially for people who feel like they have it dialed in, they're like, I'm eating the perfect diet. I know it's working great for me. I'm sleeping well. I am exercising right. Like I get a lot of people that are doing all the right things. I mean, they've cleaned up their toxic skincare, everything. And it's like, why is this not working? And what I do is I run a stool test on these people and I find some sort of protozoa, some sort of bacteria that is in there wreaking havoc on their system. Maybe they have fungal overgrowth, Candida albicans, which can become systemic. And when those things happen, then, we have to have some sort of antimicrobial protocol. You go to your physician, they would put you on a medication probably. But there's a natural way to really work with these bugs so that you can create a little bit more balance in the system and really get rid of parasites or whatever else is causing your issue. And then what I love to do next is really just rebalance the system and make sure the stomach acid is really healthy.
Mhm.
If
So
we miss this piece, then it's going to be like
yeah.
you're just going to get the infection again because you got
So
to create the right environment.
okay. So be systematic. That's one thing I heard. Versus,
Mhm.
and then the other thing is don't try to copy and paste a segment or solution from someone else's journey.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me a little bit about the microbial protocol that you recommend that's a little more homeopathic.
Yeah. So I start with cleaning up the nutrition in someone's life. So if we're eating a lot of inflammatory foods and we're causing inflammation in the gut, then it's hard to heal the gut. So inflammation is an underlying cause of disease in the body. Whatever disease process, it is going to cause it. So some of the most inflammatory foods I like to remove are things like grains. They're very difficult to digest, particularly gluten, traditional gluten, from wheat, barley, and rye. I like to remove dairy. It's very inflammatory to our system. Our cattle just aren't treated very well these days, and they're giving us pretty toxic milk and dairy products. And then I find a lot of people are sensitive to those two items. And then we're just overloaded with sugar. So if we think about sugar, like it has no beneficial properties to it. So if we're eating a lot of processed sugar, then we got to remove that as well. And I like to just start with a whole foods diet, meat, vegetables, and fruit. That's perfect. If you want to add anything else to that, those are fill-in foods. They're not your main staples. And then while doing that, I start working on inflammation. I love to use proteolytic enzymes, starts to clean up old proteins in the system, and then work on the pathogens. So we may do a stool test. Go ahead.
What are the enzymes? Repeat the enzymes. I've
Hmm.
not heard that before.
Yeah. So proteolytic enzymes go in and they clean up hard tissue in the body. They're magical. So someone with joint pain and they may have scar tissue, things like that, it can break down scar tissue. Proteolytic enzymes can also break down hard plaque in your arteries, which is amazing because traditional medicine would tell you that if you have coronary artery disease, things like that, that you can't resolve or dissolve the plaque. And that's one of the things that can do that. I've used them to break down fibroids, tumors, growths, anything hard in the body that doesn't really belong. It starts to break those things down.
Is there an amount? So three questions. Is there an amount you recommend? Is there a brand you recommend? And what are the side effects or caveats we need to be cautious of?
So I really like to use, I use Designs for Health Nattocerazime. It's a really good one. And it's just for more, all throughout the body. There are certain things that break down fibers and fibroids, growths, those types of things. There's another one that people may be really familiar with called Wobenzyme. A lot of people are using that for joint pain. And it just breaks down a lot of the inflammation. So someone with arthritis may benefit from that. And it's really depending on what you're taking it for, it's really going to be, I like to use about 3 capsules per day and kind of divide those in divided doses. So in the morning, mid afternoon, and in the evening before bed. And it's really because you want to have those things away from food. So enzymes are breaking down protein. If you have that with a food, then you're going to be breaking down your food protein. There's going to be a competition there. If there's no protein from food on board, it's looking for other live proteins. So it's going to start breaking down those other proteins and tissues and hard tissues in the body. So that's when it really works to dissolve some of those things. And I haven't really ran into any issues where these things are causing health issues. I don't know that there's anything that's really um, that it's gonna cause any problems with, like
What's
anything that you need
what's
to
the
really
duration you
be
generally
careful.
recommend people try it?
So, usually about 6 to 8 weeks is what I typically start someone on, and then some people just see such tremendous results with joint pain or things like that, and it may come back, and I'm just using joint pain as an example.
Yeah.
They could have gut issues, they could have whatever else. If they're noticing symptoms return, then they may need another round on it.
Mhm.
And
So this goes
then
back to what you were saying about being systematic.
yeah,
Try it, start to
absolutely.
ease off, see if you need to stay on.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of more for the inflammatory process. So you're cleaning up inflammation in the body. When you decrease that inflammation in the body's not necessarily on as high of alert as it was either. It's kind of like, okay, I can calm down now. I'm not under a lot of stress. Everything's safe. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. But then you have a stool test that says this person has parasites or there's a bacterial imbalance in the body. So then the next step is really to kind of work on that.
Mhm.
And it's not about going after and targeting a specific bug per se. Like I don't have a certain antimicrobial for a specific bug, but it's really about going in and targeting the microbiome as a whole and really working to create balance. So I use a range of herbs, and those are all, if it's more parasitic in nature, then I'll use a range of like parasitic type herbs or antiparasitics or antibacterials, things like that for bacterial overgrowth. And you're really just trying to clean up and sweep up because if you have parasites, then you definitely have a bacterial imbalance that comes along with that. It's just the nature of the digestive system. And you also probably have some fungus that's a little bit overgrown as well. So it's more about addressing it as a hierarchy. You want to think about parasites are kind of the big people on the ship, and you want to address those first, and then kind of make sure that that bacteria is in balance. The next step is really adding in probiotics. And if you do that too fast, then you're going to create bloating. You're going to create some other digestive type issues.
Mhm.
So that's how you know, really, if you've still got that bacterial overgrowth when you start adding probiotics and you start getting flares. And flares can be anything that were any symptoms that were present before you started doing the antimicrobial protocols. If those start coming back, then it's kind of like, wait a minute, we're feeding something again. We need to take a step back, maybe a couple weeks. And then you can bring in a different antimicrobial just to kind of like, quote unquote, trick the system, trick the bugs, right? Because these bugs can get a little bit smart. We know that because we're creating antibiotic resistant bugs and those types of things. So if we're starting to create these little smart bugs in our body, we do want to put something different in for maybe a couple weeks, and then we can go back in and add the probiotics again. And typically people do pretty well.
Okay. So it sounds like stage one is you prepare the system to pass toxins, right?
Yeah.
The various organs, and I think you were saying it was almost like a Whole30 type approach.
Yeah. That would be a perfect plan.
And
Mm-hmm.
then stage two is plugging the hole and being systematic about it. So that was the was it the microbials at that point, the enzymes?
Proteolytic enzymes is
Proteolytic.
it's
Okay.
a good time to bring those in, and
Okay.
just kind of clean up the system.
It seems like, yeah, we've had a couple of guests talk about bentonite clay and things like
Mm-hmm.
that to absorb. I don't know if that's valid with you or not.
Yeah,
It's uh,
it is.
do you just, and I guess the point I'm trying to recall, it's been a while, but it was something like you take one to sort of loosen the oxidants or the what do you call it, like the metals in your system, and then you take the bentonite clay to attach to them. Um, so after that, it sounds like it's a systematic approach of what you incorporate in terms of probiotics and these type of things to see how your body reacts.
Yeah. So, in what you're talking about with the bentonite clay is you're wanting to absorb a lot of the toxins and things in the body, even heavy metals. Like, so you can use multiple different types of binders. I do love bentonite clay. It's very simple, easy on the system, but you're using that in combination with a biofilm buster. So some people use NAC, some people use diatomaceous earth, some people use Mimosa pudica. Like there's a lot of different things that will break down the biofilm.
Mhm.
When they're being released into the body, they're very toxic and they can cause people to be very symptomatic. Like, I mean, with fever, with chills, flu like symptoms, if we release those things too quickly
Mhm.
without having something to bind to those and carry them out of the system. So
Okay.
that's where the clays come in, and that happens during the pathogen purge. So it's important to break down the biofilm so that we are targeting the pathogens. If not, they're using the biofilm as kind of like a protective mechanism. It's a
Mhm.
house that they kind of live in. So we're breaking that down and using the clay as something to absorb and grab hold of it so it releases it out of the system.
Yeah, it reminds me of like for anyone who's familiar with change of seasons, the like the expectorants and things like that,
Hmm.
where you try to loosen and get it out.
Yep.
Um, what role? And this is a little bit of a digression, but what role do the bacteria in your stomach play in your taste buds? Because I specifically remember, since you were bringing all this up, going to the dentist and them saying, you have to go on antibiotics before we do X, Y, Z. I don't remember if it was a root canal or what, but I've done it 2 or 3 times in my life, and every time it makes coffee taste like vinegar to me. If I go on the antibiotics, it ruins my taste buds for coffee. A lot of other stuff I don't notice, but coffee I can't particularly drink, and I love coffee. So it's very obvious to me when it does happen. Why is that? Can you give us a little bit as to, or do you know?
So different bugs in our gut, they're just like us. They're trying to stay alive.
Hmm.
And they live on certain foods. They live on certain things. And the bad bacteria that want to thrive, they're going to live on bad foods. They're going to live on those breads, those carbs, those
Yeah.
sugars, all those things. That's what they live on. That's what they thrive on. And when we're eating a whole foods diet and we've got a good feel of good, healthy bacteria, our body will naturally crave those foods because your bacteria are kind of speaking. It's really the gut brain connection. Your
Yeah.
gut is constantly talking to your brain. And those bacteria are actually asking for what they need to survive. And it's really about creating that happy balance because if you have more of the good, healthy bacteria in there that are kind of driving the show, then you're going to crave more of those healthy foods.
Hmm.
So I'll work with people and they'll say, I just can't come off of the dairy or the sugar or all these things. And we'll do specific things to trick the body to really shift those taste buds to invite natural, healthy whole foods in a
Yeah.
very flooded way where we're flooding the system with nutrients. And what that does is the body's like, wait a minute, that's amazing. And people will literally start craving these foods
Mhm.
because the system knows it's like, okay, I need this now to feed what is healthy inside of me.
Yeah, and when it comes to craving, I think it's a double-edged sword, and I'll tell you why. Um, I have certain foods that I have learned to crave that most people would kind of roll their eyes at. For example, I eat a can of wild sardines in my salad every day, and I eat this huge salad at lunch almost every day. If I haven't had in like 2 days, I start just thinking about it over and like, man, I can't wait to have my salad and with my sardines, whatever. On the flip side of cravings, this is where I think they get a little tricky on you. Is people will say um, after dinner, "Oh, I'm craving some carbs, so I must need it." And that's where I go, well, you're probably craving it because after dinner you have some cookies or something like that, and you that so this is where cravings, I think, one is your body's sending a signal, and the other is your body sending a signal. It's just you have to interpret which one's trying to get you to the best place. And like you said, you have to train yourself to crave those foods. Um, I don't consider. I mean, I would argue my friends and family would argue otherwise, but I don't consider myself this Dalai Lama of healthy food. But I can tell you that my cravings for things like donuts just are null and void, mostly because I've so much associated what comes with that donut. The You eat it, you kind of feel blah, you kind of have the crash, then you start burping up the oil if you have another one. To me, it's just not worth it. There are like a few sweets, like a homemade apple pie. I'll break any day for a homemade apple pie. But when you talk about those cravings, that's what I think of. The last thing I'll say about that is the one that I never thought that I would quit craving is ice cream. And so much so that when my kids, I would let them pick out whatever ice cream they want, but I tell them don't leave it in the house because then I'm going to eat it, and I don't like to eat ice cream. At some point, like I quit eating sugar a couple of years ago, and it got to a point where I couldn't even. It was so sweet the ice cream was that it was kind of anticlimactic for me if I had some. So that was the one where I used to tell people I can't get over my craving of ice cream, and yet my body at some point said we're not really craving this anymore. So there is hope, and I will
Yeah.
say, um, apples, a really good apple and things like that. It's amazing what a dessert those become when you've kind of removed sugars from your diet for a while.
It's true, and I can totally resonate with your story because I came from a place of sugar addiction. I mean, complete. I've never met anybody like myself, so I'm not judgmental at all when it comes to sugar, but I would devour one of those huge birthday cake cookies within 24 hours by myself. And my staple
I probably would
as
have
far
if anybody would have offered it to me. But
Yeah.
listen, I know your story is very
Yeah.
much because I've heard several of your interviews, but your story is a lot like other people's in this
Mhm.
sense, where
Yeah.
we associate those foods with the comfort and love that they came with. You had this memory of your dad handing you an ice cream cone.
Mhm.
And if you ask your dad, you know what he'll say? Oh, we went to the drugstore and they would pull out the soda fountain and pull us a fresh soda with ice. So those memories of food being comfort, it's so hard to disassociate that to where you're actually saying this is actually something that should be rare. It's toxic for me, and having it on a regular basis is not doing me any good.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, uh, listen, I'm not in any particular diet cult, if you
Right.
will, but the one thing that studies come back over and over when they analyze all the diets is there is no place for sugar. Like that is the one thing that they all agree on is there's no benefit to this. And this is coming from someone who was an endurance athlete. So we were fueled on that while we were running. But outside of that, it is a reward drug, is what it
Yeah.
is.
And if you'll create balance in your plate, and I think it's where so many people miss it, it's like, yeah, I'm craving the carb or the sugar or whatever after dinner also because there wasn't enough balance in my plate. I didn't get enough flavor. I didn't
Yeah, I
get
tried
enough,
to diet
like,
I tried to
you know,
diet with my last
yeah.
meal, and then an hour after dinner, I'm like, "This isn't working."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got to create that balance and get enough protein to serve your body and your body's needs, and that's where fruit comes into play. I mean, just putting a half of an apple or even a quarter of an apple in a skillet and sautéing that, or eat the whole apple, I don't care. Put it in a skillet with some coconut oil and sprinkle some cinnamon on it, and it's just like divine.
I heard a great, story. There was a doctor being interviewed the other day, and I don't know if you've heard this before, Chelsea, but they had 2, high schoolers. They were the same age, same body weight, and they started doing this thing where they came in and said in the morning, made sure they hadn't had breakfast, and they said, "Eat as much as you want," and they had these foods laid out for them. The first person had, I think it was like 10 ounces of orange juice or something like which is just loaded in sugar, and then a Big Mac, fries, and a milkshake, and there were just all sorts of foods, and they were allowed to eat as much as they want till they were full. Well, this person goes through the juice, the Big Mac, the fries, and the shake, and then he's like, "I'm full." The second person, same set of foods, except for one difference. He had to peel and eat the oranges manually. Well, he couldn't even eat past the fifth orange because he was eating real fruit and eating the whole fruit. So he didn't even get to the Big Mac and the fries and the milkshake. But that's kind of the point, right? When you eat the foods in their natural form, there's so much fiber, there's so many nutrients. And and yeah, it's not going to be as rich as orange juice when you eat an orange, but that's kind of the point. Your body says by the time your body gets the signal, it's processing the orange, processing the apple. It says, "I'm good. I
Yeah.
don't really need anything." So the point there is so many people think when we talk about these things like apples and orange, "Oh, I don't want to deprive myself of my real dessert." Well, the point is you're not going to crave those things as much when you're eating the right foods at the right time.
Right. Yeah. And if you're balancing with good healthy fats and really you talk about the apple pie. I mean, it's really not any different. You're warming the apples in a skillet, you're putting some cinnamon
Yeah.
on there and like you're using the coconut oil and all the fat brings out the flavor and all that. All you're missing is the crust and your brain is telling you, "Oh, I miss the apple pie. Grandmother's apple pie was the best,"
Yeah.
and it's really the flavor is very similar if you just kind of try to recreate the experience instead
Yeah.
of going back to your traditional apple pie that has loads of sugar,
Yeah.
added sugars, the crust which is full of the gluten and all the things that so many people have a problem digesting and you still can get the good fun feel and you can have fun foods without depriving yourself
Yeah.
and feeling like you're missing out on life.
I love it. I love it very much so. All right, so I want to sort of pivot here. We That was a good. Anything else you want to add on gut before we switch off?
Go ahead. I'm all
Okay.
ears.
Question I throw to some of my guests, not quite all of them, but what are your top 3 supplements that you've picked up in the last year that have kind of surprised you, whether it was through studies or results of your own?
So, one thing that I will say that I love, and it's not necessarily a like one pinpointed supplement like zinc, it is medical foods.
Mhm.
And there's a difference between like a protein shake and a medical food that has a job in the body and it actually works on specific mechanisms inside the body. So, for example, a lot of people ask, what is your favorite protein shake? Well, I don't necessarily just recommend protein shakes to anybody just to like get more protein. There's usually a reason that I'm recommending a protein shake. And it's not that I'm against them. I mean, I'm okay. If you choose to have a protein shake and you add some whole foods with it every single day, perfectly fine. But I would rather use some sort of detox formula,
Right.
or if you have cardiovascular issues, I would rather use a cardiovascular specific formula that has phytosterols and those types of things in it to support your cardiovascular health. Or if you have severe digestive issues, I would rather use a digestive supporting medical food. These are protein shakes with very specific nutrients in them to support these body systems. So some people may take them for life, some people may take them for a period of time for
Yeah.
healing, but they're very powerful and they're something I use with every client.
It's funny you say that. I had a friend over at the house maybe 2 days ago, and this electrolyte mix I had was almost like a hybrid between like athletic greens and
Mhm.
electrolyte. And I made the comment to the guy, I was like, I actually don't like anything mixed in my electrolytes except for electrolytes. Well, he said I'm the exact opposite way because I don't like to eat vegetables, so I want all the powdered antioxidants I can get. So going back to the definition of what a supplement is, right? It's not a replacement. It's supposed to be in addition to a balanced diet that to give you that edge. So it sounds like sort of catered protein shakes was number one on the list, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and the other thing that I've really just given a lot more recognition to over the past, I would say, year of my career is working to rebuild stomach acid. And I think, and we briefly touched on this when we were talking about the microbiome, but it is so important that we focus on good, healthy stomach acid. If we look at our aging population and we say, well, grandma's just not eating as much, a lot of this is because as we age, our stomach acid decreases.
Mhm.
And especially the population of people that I work with, there's already underlying digestive issues. There's already something going on. We live in a very toxic world, a very high stress world. It leads to stress on the gut, which leads to a condition called leaky gut. All those different types of things are going on inside all the time. The stress is decreasing your stomach acid along with the aging process. And if we don't maintain a good, healthy stomach acid, we are going to see those pathogens return. And this is why so many times people will come and they'll say, I did a SIBO cleanse or I did a SIBO protocol. Everything came back. I don't know why I keep getting this same infection over and over again. There's something wrong with me. And I'm like, well, let's fix the nutrition, but part of it is your stomach acid. And I think that's a huge piece of the missing puzzle. I wish I could preach this from the mountaintops because I think so many people are missing this in traditional gut healing protocols. Even in the natural medicine industry, we're missing the stomach rebuilding to the point that I now have my clients post working with me checking stomach acid every year because I want to make sure. And they'll message me. They're so happy. They're like, "Oh, my stomach acid is like I'm maintaining good stomach acid." And I'm teaching them to do that through foods as well as the supplement, but we're just using betaine HCl to rebuild that. And after you work on your stomach pathogens and you get rid of those things, you can rebuild the stomach acid to healthy levels with that one supplement. And it's just magical.
Okay. I've heard of that, and I've probably used it before. Tell me about the protocol you use to implement the HCl,
Yeah, so I
which I
do.
think stands for like hydrochloric acid or something like that. Or
Yes. So it is, so you're really in there. The protocols are, you can probably actually, you can find this online, but I can share the one that I personally use. It is rebuilding with small amounts of HCl daily. and I use HCl with pepsin. So it's one capsule of whatever brand you choose, betaine HCl, and you take that into every day and you increase the dose every day until you get a little bit of burning, almost like, oh, is that indigestion or a warm feeling in my gut? And then you titrate back down once you hit that point of burning. Then you start titrating the supplements back down so that you can teach your body to make its own acids. So, and then when you run out, when you kind of ramp back down and you titrate out, you just stop. And then a year later, you're going to run the protocol on yourself again to make sure, hey, is this going good? In the meantime, you're going to be including your bitter greens. You're going to be including apple cider vinegar, ginger, all those good foods to help increase and keep the stomach acid at a nice level. That's the supplement that I use.
Okay, so what time of day should we be doing this
Your largest meal.
largest meal? So
Mhm.
before the largest meal or after?
Yep. And really, if you're doing betaine HCl on an empty stomach, you're going to get burning because there's nothing in the body for it to digest. So I usually tell my clients, take a few bites of food, like get some food like going down, start the digestion process, then take your supplement, maybe a few bites in, mid-meal, even after is fine. But I like it mid-meal because you got one of two things happening. Someone has slow digestion, that pill is going to be sitting here at the top of your, top of your food, and it's not going to go down very fast. So it's going to open up in your chest and cause the burning. And if you take it too soon, you're going to get burning in your stomach because there's nothing in there to digest. So I usually like to take it mid-meal.
Okay. I like that. How long do you find it usually takes that whole protocol from start to finish?
It really depends on the person. So if I'm working with someone, they've been working on stomach acid for about 2 to 3 months before they ever begin that. So it's usually, if they've been working on it and they have a pretty decent amount of stomach acid, I'll find some of my clients will get up to like 5 or 6 capsules and they'll feel the burn. Some people are going to get up to 14 capsules. I tell people stop there because they're going to get up to 14 capsules and it's like, okay, just go ahead and come back down. You might need to retest, or there's some other issues going on that we really probably need to work on. And we need to make sure that you're getting the right foods in your diet, enough bitter foods, enough, vinegars and those types of things to rebuild the acid. But I mean, sometimes it can take a month to get your levels back.
Mm-hmm. All right. Very good to know. I've always, I've not been a quick digester, so it would be interesting for me. I was part of my struggle as a runner is I could not eat anything within hours of running. When I was running, it had to be like a liquid thing or I'd just get indigestion. Good to
Yes.
know.
And indigestion, that reminds me of the third supplement that I love.
Yeah. Okay.
So it is, you probably know it as reishi mushroom, or Ganoderma lucidum. It is probably one of the biggest life-changing supplements because it works synergistically with a lot of other things. So before I knew Ganoderma or reishi, I was implementing a protocol and I mean, things are going great, but adding in that supplement can really speed up the healing process.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found,
is this just reishi straight?
it is.
Okay.
And I'll share with you what I use currently and what I'm using on my clients because it's so easy. I use a company called Organo, and they have a coffee, and you can get different mushroom coffee blends, and it's just as simple as replacing your cup of coffee every day.
Mm-hmm.
If not, if you like to take a capsule, I like the broken spores. So it's the most potent form of the mushroom.
Yeah.
But there are over 3,000 scientific studies on reishi. It is the most studied natural substance, and it is phenomenal the things that's happening. I mean, everything from the brain, Alzheimer's, gut health, leaky gut, cognition. People are coming off of diabetic I can't even say this kind of stuff. I know it's probably not even legal for me to say, but I've seen miracles with just almost every system.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I think I think mushrooms have definitely come into the spotlight in the last 5 to 10 years,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
for Sigmatic. I do remember an interview with Dr. Andrew Weil where he stated, "You cannot hold me to this because it's him that stated it," but he stated that the one food that was associated with Alzheimer's and dementia was the people who ate more mushrooms were much less likely to suffer those type of issues.
Wow. Yeah.
And the amount I think was on that the populations that they studied, it was about a cup of mushrooms a day before you cook them down or whatever. So it's good to know, especially the reishi part. I'm curious now how it would affect me. I do have there's an Oriental store that sells like the exotic foods and stuff. And when I'm there, the lady always pushes reishi tea on me. she's
Oh, yeah.
she's
Try
like, "You
it.
got to get this tea. It's just life changing. Get this tea." I do
Try
like
it.
it. It is
I can
good.
tell you some amazing stories for me personally. I remember I had indigestion every time I had coffee, and I loved it. And my grandmother brought me up on coffee. I mean, from the time I was drinking a bottle, she wanted me to be awake. So she would put coffee in my bottle. Like I literally had coffee my entire life since I was a
Wow.
baby. And so I love it, of course. It's one of those comfort foods or comfort beverages. And I would get indigestion no matter what brand I tried. I tried all the low toxin, low
Yeah.
mold, all
Yeah.
the. So I would literally bite down on a lemon afterwards just to rebalance the acid or rebalance my pH. And I found this coffee and I was like, this is a fluke. I tried it for 3 days and my indigestion completely went away. And I was like, there's no way. There's
So
no
do you
way.
think I can have the reishi and separate from the coffee and still get the same effect, or do you think it
Oh,
needs to be?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I
Because I am
mean,
a coffee snob, Chelsea. I mean, I'm a
yeah.
super I've been roasting my own beans now for 10 years. So
Okay. My husband is very much into his beans and grinding and doing all the things himself as well. So he does the spores, he does a capsule,
yeah.
and I do the coffee. So it's really just another way to get the substance.
I will do the
Yeah.
spores. I used to have massive indigestion from coffee. I haven't had and I haven't had much issues with it lately, but I certainly wouldn't mind having a little bit of reishi because if I have I can't mix coffee with food. That's one thing I know. If I do, I start to have reflux. The second thing is if I have a cup later in the day after I've eaten, it tends to cause problems. So now I'm going to experiment with the reishi. Thanks to you, in our
Yes.
initial pre interview, I've been having lemon water every single morning for over a month. Which should tell you how many times we've tried to connect because I've been doing it for a
Yes.
month now. And I eat a grapefruit now every day. So I eat it.
How's it
And
going?
great, great. I mean, I'm doing fantastic. I will say I eat, and it's funny how, especially because years ago, I was in the low carb camp of how much it's so hard to get back in that mindset. And I've been trying to do it for years. This is not new, but of eating fruit again, and you kind of demonize the carbs and whatnot. But I've I've made sure that when I go to the store now, it's just like I load a whole shelf of my fridge with grapefruit, lemon, and apples is what I do. And now previously, I think I was doing apples and I eat blueberries every day, but now I'm kind of diversifying it, if you will.
Yeah, I think we can get on these fads and it stresses us out to move
Hmm.
off of them. And I've been everything. I mean, I've been vegan, like I've been low carb, high carb, like whatever there is out there, low fat, no fat. I mean, it's like, and I think that the body appreciates those breaks from certain
Yeah,
things to heal. Like that's so true. And I'll help my clients find the right system for their body so that they can heal. But I think any of those things long term, you're not really doing your body any favor because you're
yeah,
missing out on nutrients.
that's right.
You really need the nutrition long term. That's what your body's asking for. That's why we eat.
Yeah. So I was making a journal in the mornings, and I made a journal entry the other day that was kind of what we're talking about here, which it stated that I think I was talking to myself, of course, but I said I think the biggest benefit I get from keeping this journal is what is no longer serving me.
Mm,
When we think of journals, we think of, oh, I had this epiphany and I want to try this, or I'm tracking a goal that I'm pursuing. But in all reality, I started looking back over entries and I said, more than anything, I look at this no longer serves me. Why am I doing this? I'm going to eliminate this from my life, or at least reduce it, right? And that's I think a lot of what you're talking about with the diet cults is, somebody, same as we talked about at the very beginning of this interview, copying and pasting a story over ourselves and saying, oh,
Right.
well, look what it did for Rich Roll or whoever, and I want to do that for me. I want to be that person who's happy and vitality. So I'm just going to copy and paste their model. What I think is probably not spoken about enough, Chelsea, when we think of these successes with these approaches is most all of them focus on removing processed foods. And if you are on a diet that's heavy on processed foods, it doesn't matter whether you go Mediterranean, paleo, or vegan. When you do that, you immediately are like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And of course, we want to share that victory with all of our friends and family and things like that. The last thing I'll say about that is, to me, and you can correct me on this, Chelsea. To me, the the diets that are a little bit strict about what you can and can't have the success has more to do with the person's personality. In other words, they are the kind of person that said for example, if you say you can't have French fries on this diet, they'll be like, then that's great because if I have access to it, I can't control it, right?
Right.
So there are certain people who seem to thrive with that. I can't have all this stuff, and I just have my access to this. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best approach, but it might be the best approach for them.
Right. And I do find that it's really difficult. Like if I give someone a plan and I'm like, okay, meat, this is your amount, this is your amount of fruit, this is your amount of vegetables, they will follow that plan to a T. The minute I start adding things back in and saying, okay, we've been in this phase of limitation, like that is over. Body has rested, everything's starting to heal. Let's start to bring some of these foods back in. The nervousness kicks in and they're like, "Oh no, I have no idea what to eat." And it's like, and that's when people start falling off the wagon. And it's like, you can't remain on this strict
Yeah.
plan the rest of your life though. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum. Then you have someone who feels, so super deprived on that, meat, fruit, and vegetables, not looking at it as like, okay, my body just needs to go on a vacation from all this stuff for a little while and then I can bring it back in. But the mind is just so stressed over the fact that there's this limited, amount of food to eat when truly it's like super abundant if we think about it. But they look at the limitations of what they can't have. And it's almost like they're falling off the wagon every week because, it's like, oh, I just went ahead and ate the French fries. I just couldn't do it. It was just too much. It was stressful. So it really is in the determination. And I've been really careful and, just making sure that people are ready for this process because while it can be simple, it's not always easy. And having that good support system, having all those things in place, they're really a big key to your success.
Well, I'm going to circle back to the first thing you said about your attitude, and I think that sort of is a great way to wrap up this interview and say, when you have the right attitude towards creating a healthier life, as opposed to saying, how long do I have to be miserable? How long do I have to suffer through this? And how long are you going to take my favorite foods like pizza and beer away from me? Then it's like, well, of course you're going to fail because all you're going to be doing is going, when can I quit? When can I quit? When am I done? And so attitude, I think, is something we have to shift. I think the identity, where we kind of alluded to that earlier about, how we associate the sugar and the sweet foods. There are people who, for example, they have this identity of I go to a pub food all the time, right? And you have to say, if you want to transition to a healthy life, you've got to let go of that idea. There isn't a way that I know of that you can continue to eat the pub food all the time and continue to thrive and grow. So um, there's a lot of psychological aspects here, even though you are a nutritionist and basically and well-rounded one at that, because you do it from the spiritual dynamic, the brain, the body. I'm just so happy we're able to connect and help you share your message, Chelsea.
Yeah, I've loved this. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And I think that it's so important for people to see the full picture. And the like you said, the attitude is 1000% where it's at. If we can kind of see ourselves as the person we want to become, then we can become that. It's really focusing there. Like if you want to be the person that takes medications the rest of your life, that's okay. Like that, if that's where you are, perfectly fine. Just own it, embrace it, and don't try the new like lifestyle plan. If changing your lifestyle is where you want to go, though, then you have to see yourself down the road as this healthy person living this healthy lifestyle, doing the things like getting out in nature, making it fun, figuring out what it takes to enjoy the lifestyle. Because the more you enjoy it and the more you create your life around it instead of putting it on as a diet hat,
Hmm.
then the more you are going to be likely to stick with it. And then your family's going to see it and they're going to say, oh my gosh, look at this person. I
Yeah.
want to do that too. And you're going to create this ripple effect.
Well said, Chelsea. Very well said. Where can people find out more?
I'm at chelsieward.com. That's CHELSIEWARD.com. And I have a book there. I have a free metabolic guide there. If you want to find out the perfect diet for you, you can just download that guide. There's a lot of information there and also coaching programs. If you feel like this is some work you want to dive deeper into, you can look at those on my page as well. And just whatever you do, take one nugget from this interview today and just go and apply it to your life one step at a time. And I think that's really what's going to help us reach our goals.
I love it. Sustainable progress. And I did do the guide and found it insightful. I appreciate you sharing that.
Great. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea.
Thank you, Daniel.